Hello again, people. Today we're going to be continuing to praise Christopher Judge's performance as he embodies Kratos, the God of War. We will be detailing Kratos' progression through the course of God of War Ragnarok, remarking periodically about other characters and their interactions with Kratos. No more preamble, let's get right into it. Begin God of War Ragnarok. Some time has passed as we have a simple yet effective establishing shot of Kratos. Already we see grief in his eyes as he holds the bag that previously contained his wife's ashes. Kratos has understandably done some emotional growing over the past few years of Fimbulwinter. When Faye's body was burning in God of War 2018, Kratos did not allow himself to properly grieve her death. Instead, he decided to take Atreus on a hunting trip, but Kratos seemingly still has some grieving to do, as well as some emotional growing. More on that later. If we're talking about story, this establishing shot is about as perfect as you can get. Atreus entering the cave with the deer on his back tells us in a span of a few seconds that number 1, Atreus now goes hunting on his own, number 2, Atreus has become a better hunter over the years, number 3, Atreus is becoming more independent than ever, and finally, number 4, something we can discern from Freya showing up later, Atreus is who led Freya back to Kratos. Speaking of Kratos, and ergo, Christopher Judge and Sonny Soljack in their roles share a wonderful bond together. Their friendship is what made the relationship between Kratos and Atreus so natural. In less than 5 minutes, we now have a good idea of where our main characters are in their progression, and roughly what has transpired from the last game. I wasn't kidding when I said this game didn't waste any time. And of course, since we're not wasting any time, we see that Freya has caught up with Kratos and Atreus. Danielle Bascuti was fantastic as Freya in the previous game, but here she has been utilized far more than I ever would have expected. One thing is clear, Freya is out for blood and she will draw as much as she can in her rage over her fallen child. This first scene is where the mocap performances really begin to shine at both the actors. We are treated to an incredible close-up shot of Freya's eyes. Freya is clearly trying with everything she has to kill Kratos, but to no one's surprise, Kratos does not want to hurt Freya in any way. You can hear the sheer desperation in Christopher Judge's voice in the sequence, and when it all comes to a close, we see an incredible amount of anger within Kratos' face. I think the most of Kratos' anger comes from Atreus being endangered. Look closely at Kratos' face. He's noticeably pissed, but when he turns to see Atreus unharmed, he begins to calm down. On a brief side note, Freya is pretty lucky that Atreus' father taught him restraint. A single shot to the throat would have taken Freya out of commission at least. After their scuffle, Kratos begins the ritual of unhooking the wolves from their sled. Atreus insists that he can perform the task himself. Kratos looks to his son as he independently fulfills the closing task for the night. He can't help but feel a sense of accomplishment for his work as a father. The satisfied expression and the head nod say more than words ever could. This satisfaction doesn't last long, however, as Fenrir is drawing his last breath. I have seen some people criticize the scene as a needless tear-jerking moment, or even cheap emotional manipulation. The sudden nature of this scene is actually fitting for what the scene is trying to accomplish. One would hope that they do, but it actually doesn't matter if the player feels sadness over Fenrir's death, although I must say it is sad to see the good boy go. The importance of this scene lies in the fact that Atreus cares about Fenrir's passing. The disconnect from this event that the audience has is made to mirror Kratos' disconnect in this scene. As soon as Fenrir dies, Kratos tells Atreus to go train. Ignore the grief. Kratos does not do this out of malice, mind you, he simply believes this is the best way of handling things. Kratos believes that to dwell on sorrow makes you careless, and training is the only way to quell this sadness. Kratos in the past has been completely oblivious to Atreus' emotions, but now Kratos is a lot more aware of what Atreus is feeling. Atreus is raising his voice, questioning his father's decisions and implying that he is hiding from Odin, but Kratos remains calm.
We do not hide. We prepare for a fight for which we are not ready.
Kratos is patient with Atreus, never raising his voice until a single fact is mentioned by Atreus. Kratos loses his patience when Atreus implies that Faye wanted the both of them to fight against Asgard.
We do not know what Mother wanted.
Listen to the exact moment Kratos raises his voice. Kratos understandably denies such a notion. After Kratos realized that they were sent to Jotunheim to find the giant's prophecy, I'm sure his mind was racing with questions. There is a sense of fear in the back of Kratos' mind that Faye specifically wanted Kratos to fight the forces of Asgard for the purpose of her own revenge. If this was the case, then this would mean that Faye was manipulating Kratos to kill people on her behalf, and this idea makes Kratos sick. To be used as a pawn to fight another war against gods by his own wife no less, Kratos more than likely told Faye of his past and his terrible history with the gods. There are times where Kratos expresses resentment over the fact that Faye kept secrets from him. Kratos leaves his son to his own devices, and enters his house where we are greeted by Mimir. After a brief exchange of dialogue between the two brothers, Kratos falls asleep. Kratos falls into his slumber and he is treated to a familiar face. Kratos often dreams of his past memories, but this dream carries heavy significance. For the first time, we see Kratos' interactions with his late wife, Faye. Faye is on the hunt for an injured wolf, and Kratos, or should I say, Grumbles, is joining her. Only Faye can call him that. Anyone else gets their neck snapped. They are searching for a sick wolf that they initially saw outside of their home. The lone wolf has made its way inside and now is killing the game around their house. Kratos explains that they did not need to help the wolf then because the wolf did not concern them. Faye retorts that a problem does not have to be apparent to warrant their attention. Faye takes the stance that if they have the power to help, they should. They should not hide from the problems of the world. Like with the argument with Atreus, Kratos claims that they are not hiding.
If we have the power to limit the harm it could cause, we should act.
This will be one of many visions that serves to inform us of Kratos' behavior over the course of the game. This scene is also one of the highlights of Christopher Judge's facial performance. Rarely do we see genuine fear in the face of our God of War. The lion's share of this scene lies within Christopher Judge's impeccable breathing control.
Brother?
I use the saying lion's share because Kratos awakens like a literal lion ready to pounce on any who have come to ambush him. This lion's cub has gone missing. In their search, Kratos and Mimir determined that Atreus was attacked by a large bear. Upon fighting the bear, Kratos more than likely sees the bear as a simple animal, nothing more. He would kill this animal and be done with it, because in his mind that's all it is. It is not until the bear is battered and reveals his true form does Kratos realize what he has done. Much like before, we rarely see utter despair from Kratos, as he is almost always sure of his actions. The bear was in fact Atreus. You can hear Kratos' voice begin to break as he realizes the bear he just laid into was his own son.
Atreus! 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 Atreus!
Kratos borderline begins to break down as his son lays at his feet covered in his own blood. In his past, Kratos was deceived into murdering his own family, and since then he has literally been marked for his mistake and made to pay for it, both externally and internally. This is Kratos' worst nightmare. The PTSD is overtaking him as he finds it difficult to breathe. After seeing Atreus is in fact alive and healed, only then does Kratos find control over his breathing again.
First, focus. Heal.
Atreus is clearly upset of the events that have transpired, but Kratos reassures him that what happened was not his fault. He uses this as a learning opportunity to further explain his position that Atreus must continue his training out of the uncertainty of his new powers. The argument from earlier continues. Atreus continues to convince his father that they should act against Odin. We know Atreus wants to find Tyr, but Kratos is desperately trying to make his son understand the severity of what just happened.
Someone that could give us answers about the giants and who Loki's supposed to be.
Atreus!
Wouldn't it help to understand what I'm becoming?
Atreus! Listen to me. I might have killed you.
Kratos absolutely could have killed Atreus if he did not change back in time. No one would have been able to help. They don't have Freya or anyone to heal him. The only reason why he's alive at all is because he inherited his father's healing abilities. The dread in Christopher Judge's voice brings the argument to a halt again. Kratos is now dealing with the fruits of his labor, so to speak. Atreus is now less obedient to him, but this is exactly what Kratos was teaching him, to think critically, to question his environment, to make his own decisions and arguments. The scene climaxes with Christopher Judge, much like in 2018, speaking a line twice with different implications.
Stop thinking like a father for a moment and start thinking like a general.
No!
Kratos refuses, almost as if he is insulted by this notion. He becomes angry at the idea that he would use Atreus as a soldier to fight in a war much like he was so long ago.
No.
A much more caring response to imply that Kratos would never use his son as a weapon. Brief side note, shout out to the animators for taking the time to animate Mimir's face during this scene. It's clear that seeing the boys fight is weighing on him, but both sides are raising excellent points, so he finds it hard to interject. As if that assortment of scenes wasn't enough to get our head racing with questions. We are only about an hour in, and this next scene is one of the best in the entire game. The continuation of the cliffhanger in 2018 begins with an introduction of Thor, the god of thunder. After revealing Mjolnir, everyone understands who he is and what he might want. But, as we know, Thor simply asks if he can come inside and chat over some mead. There is so much going on in this scene that we are going to have to break the mold of Christopher Judge praise for a second. Everyone here gives a fantastic performance. Let's break it down piece by piece. If you listen closely, you can hear Kratos murmur something about Mimir to Atreus, most likely telling him to hide Mimir somewhere. A small detail, but one that truly shows Kratos now really cares about Mimir. The heckin' chonkin' boy Thor enters the room and compliments Kratos on his house, in such a way that I cannot tell if he is being sarcastic or if he legitimately is complimenting him. Thor and Kratos both place their weapons upon the table in front of them. Such a small gesture, but in the span of a few seconds, we see where the similarities between Thor and Kratos begin, and also where they end. Thor begins to gauge the situation, as we now know he is clearly a scout. Both him and Odin's ravens are sent ahead to assure that Kratos won't just outright attack him. Tensions are high, but Kratos explains that he can talk as long as the moment requires it. Enter Odin, played by Richard Skiff. Now, there was a lot of conversation regarding Odin's look and how he was presented in Ragnarok. Quite frankly, I'm not sure what people were expecting. Everything we were told about Odin in 2018 translates to this Odin perfectly. Odin is the king of the Aesir gods, but as Mimir explained, his story is built off of lies and bloodshed. People had this impression that just because he is a balding old man, that he wasn't strong. Odin is, and always will be, one of the best, if not the best villain in God of War history, and it would take a lot to convince me otherwise. Immediately, when he begins to speak, he takes control of the room and the conversation.
You know who I am?
Right away, he begins to recontextualize everything that happened between the two groups as mere misunderstandings. A misunderstanding implies that something went wrong that can be fixed. If Kratos knows anything, he knows that the killing of kin does not come without retribution. Once more, such a small detail, so small I don't think anyone mentions it when they talk about this scene.
Now, what you did to his boys. Self-defense.
When Odin begins to speak, he slams his hand down onto the table. Whether Kratos or anyone knows this or not, this is actually a form of manipulation. The simple act of laying your hand down onto something may seem harmless, but it signifies order, like a judge slamming down their gavel to bring order to a courtroom. Odin is taking control of the situation with his body language and his voice. Odin continues to recontextualize what happened.
Self-defense. Dying is what we Aesir live for.
Implying that they were acting autonomously. We know that this is simply not the case. Odin knows damn well that he cannot beat Kratos, whether it's in one-on-one combat or even two-on-one combat with Thor backing him up, so he tries to strike a deal with Kratos asking for peace. Every bit of counsel regarding Odin paint Odin as a lying, cheating, manipulative god who only seeks to meet his own ends. Kratos has too much experience with gods like this to play along. Notice how Kratos reaches for the Leviathan when Odin even motions towards Atreus? Just a side note, I would like to shout out Alistair Duncan in this scene. The sheer pain and rage from seeing Odin again has Mimir seething. If you listen closely, you can actually hear the moment he inhales to give Odin a piece of his mind.
Why should we believe a word of you? What have your promises ever been worth?
There he is, my old partner in crime.
Thanks to Mimir's wise counsel, Kratos knows better than to trust any deal with Odin, but the final straw was when Odin threatens Freya. Even though she is currently on a vengeful rampage to kill him, Kratos cares about Freya. He respects her, and above all else, he believes the world needs her. The ball is tossed into Kratos' court, and simply and plainly, Kratos says,
No.
Nothing else is spoken, but plenty is said between these two characters. To simplify it, Odin now understands that he cannot manipulate Kratos, and therefore he will try to do so with Atreus. He cannot do so with Kratos standing there, so he gives Thor the go-ahead to start breaking things. Upon Kratos' return home, he questions Atreus about why he's been searching for Tyr. Kratos' face turns to rage when he realizes that Atreus has been keeping secrets from him. Out of all the things Kratos values, honesty is one of the highest traits on his list. Really, could he blame Atreus over the way Kratos kept so many secrets from him in his youth? By keeping those secrets from Atreus under the guise of protecting him, he taught Atreus that it's okay to keep secrets from the people you care about if you want to protect them. On the count that Thor and Odin could potentially come back, Kratos comes to the conclusion that their home is no longer safe from the One-Eyed King. I really didn't mince words when I said that even the side pieces of dialogue are important. We will for the most part be talking about the main story, but the side content also carries value that cannot be ignored. On the way to the Skull and Hati shrine, Mimir converses with Kratos for a moment. Mimir brings to Kratos' attention that since Atreus is getting older, he will walk his own path, and in Mimir's words,
Brother, he's going to walk his own path. If you don't want him walking away from you, then smarten up and walk with him a while.
This piece of dialogue is spoken during play, but it informs most of Kratos' actions throughout the entire game. Our adventure kicks off in Svartalfheim, where we begin the rescue of Tyr. Now let's talk about these mining rigs. Mimir laments over the fact that these mining rigs are taking valuable resources that would instead go to the dwarves. Odin sought to subjugate the dwarves and control them as he did with all things. Mimir came up with a plan that would allow the dwarves to serve Odin instead of being wiped out by Thor or the Einherjar. Mimir had to trick the dwarves into serving Odin. They would live, but they would live in fear. As Kratos says, Mimir was made to solve an impossible problem. Above all else, I wanted to mention this because Kratos calls Mimir brother at the end of this labor.
You must live with your deeds, but do not be troubled by them, brother.
Oh? And why not?
You were given an impossible problem. Do not blame yourself for failing to solve it.
Onward to find Tyr. Tyr is the god of war in Norse mythology. He has been set up for years to be this universally loved peacekeeper who sought to unite the realms. Both Kratos and Atreus have high expectations from Tyr. Kratos is convinced that Tyr is dead, but Atreus adamantly refuses to give up the search. Upon finding Tyr, he is timid, dull, and a little bit cowardly. He runs away at the sight of Mimir's head. Kratos becomes enraged by Tyr's actions. The subtext of this scene is what brings this scene together. This whole time, Atreus has been hoping to meet Tyr, the god of war, the one who stood for the giants. Christopher Judge's performance here emulates this moment that I'm sure quite a bit of dads have gone through. Their son idolizes somebody that isn't them and wants nothing more in the world to meet them.
Are you not a soldier? Are you not a leader of men? Master yourself! My son brought us to this place. For you! Look at him!
Of course, we know that Odin is really Tyr at this point, and most likely he is trying to look so insignificant that they simply give up on him. After springing Tyr, they make their way to Sindri's house. Kratos not only trusts Mimir enough to seek his advice on critical points in his life, but also to confide his emotions. In this scene, Christopher Judge's voice emanates nostalgia, a longing for his life to return to normal.
I just wish Atreus were not so restless. I care only for his safety.
It's no surprise that Kratos just wanted a quiet life with his son in the woods. No battles, no god killings, just a small, quiet home for his family. He also wishes that his son would want the same. Atreus overhears this dialogue and it convinces him to go find Freya, which begins her arc. We won't talk about that here because this video is meant to highlight Christopher Judge, so instead, let's just jump to Atreus returning home. After making food for the group, Tyr jokingly looks to Atreus and says, "A meal fit for a champion." Kratos becomes annoyed at this notion that his son is this champion of the Jotnar destined to fight at Ragnarok. Atreus reminds Kratos of their adventures in the first game. He refuses to think that Faye's intentions were to send Atreus and himself to fight in a war for revenge. Atreus throughout this game has referred to himself as Loki many times. Before, his father has set this aside, not thinking much of the implications. But this moment after learning that he might be this champion to fight at Ragnarok has made Kratos snap.
But what if Loki going to Ironwood is the only way that...
Atreus. My son. And nothing more.
Pure frustration oozes from Kratos' lips as he demands his son accept that he is Atreus. Nothing more. Atreus becomes insulted by this as he storms out of the room. What follows is Atreus' time in Ironwood, which we won't be going over because, like I said, this video is meant to highlight Christopher Judge's performance. So, like before, let's jump ahead to when Atreus gets back from Ironwood. Atreus attempts to walk through the door to the realm between realms, but almost waiting for him, Kratos barrels through, knocking Atreus aside. As soon as Atreus returned to Midgard, they were probably able to pick up his scent, so to speak. There is this unspoken way of tracking people in this world, presumably through magic that I wish they would explain a bit, but I digress. This is absolutely one of my favorite scenes in the entire game. Atreus, unbeknownst to him, has been gone for 2 days straight, and Kratos is furious. Kratos may be angry, but I would say he's a lot more sad than anything else. Look at how his expression shifts from rage to melancholy. His voice begins to break when he highlights that Atreus has been here alone, without Kratos there to protect him.
Why did you come here? Alone? Do you seek death?
Kratos is desperately trying to understand why Atreus has become so detached from him as of late. It weighs on his spirit like the memory of Faye's secrets. The realization that his wife kept so many secrets from him still troubles him to this day. Now his son is disappearing for days on end, keeping secrets from him as well, and putting himself into danger. Kratos just can't take it. One thing, and one thing only, matters to Kratos at this point in his life: the safety of his son. And now his very son is becoming his son's greatest threat. Throughout all of Kratos' life, he has rarely met a problem that he couldn't simply punch away. But here, he is struggling to keep his son safe from himself. Whenever I see Christopher Judge's face in this scene, I hear one word in my head.
Then why? Why? What is it you will not tell me?
Kratos is questioning Atreus, yes, but his face is asking a whole different array of questions. Why are you doing this to me? Why do you not trust me? Why won't you let me protect you? Why is my love not good enough for you? Why am I not good enough for you? Traveling to Alfheim was Kratos giving Atreus his chance to have his adventure. Kratos knew that his son would continue to walk this path around Ragnarok, but he would walk with his son if only it meant to keep him safe from danger. He had hoped that this meant that Atreus would stop keeping things from him, but unfortunately the secrets only grew. Their argument is broken up by the appearance of Draugr and a Valkyrie, but we're not done yet. This Valkyrie is not known to Kratos, so they assume that it was sent by Odin. Not until does Kratos get a face-to-face with her does he realize that this Valkyrie is in fact Freya.
Freya?
The sheer shock in Christopher Judge's voice when he realizes who this person he has been fighting with intent to kill is actually that nice lady who used to live underneath the turtle. I think on some level Freya's transformation has Kratos feeling a certain amount of guilt. He says that he does not regret his actions, but regret does not mean lack of guilt. Freya has gone down this path of revenge that Kratos has put her on by killing her son. Kratos' intentions were to save her life, because beforehand Freya was a kind and gentle person whose only crime, if you can even call it that, was allowing herself to be tricked into marrying a man to end a war to save her people. Freya took care of Atreus when he was sick. She helped them accomplish their journey of spreading Faye's ashes, and now she is a vengeful, angry warrior seeking justice for her son. Kratos indirectly has created a monster of his own. Naturally, after learning this, Kratos does not defend himself against Freya. Right before Freya gets the chance to do some serious damage, Atreus loses it and becomes the bear once again. Much to her surprise, Kratos throws himself in between the two to defend her. With desperation flowing from his words, Kratos cannot sit back and let Atreus do this for two big reasons. The first, he knows that if Atreus did kill Freya, Atreus would never be able to forgive himself. And the second, because, like before, Kratos doesn't want Freya to die.
Atreus! You do not want this! Control your mind! Control it!
So much so that some people speculate that that goes beyond friendship. I wouldn't agree with that necessarily, but I do think Kratos and Freya will always be good friends. I kind of want to make a whole separate video detailing Freya's journey because, Holy crap, does she get a lot of development in this game? We'll save all of that for later. With Freya's anger momentarily quelled, they make for Vanaheim. In this section, we get a chance to see Kratos talk about his past and how he feels about his previous actions. Kratos talks about his brother and even his daughter. Throughout their adventure in Vanaheim, Kratos and Freya go back and forth talking about their past. Freya becomes fed up with Kratos' words, most likely because they are changing her mind. Freya tells Kratos to just shut up and kill things. Kratos is noticeably upset by this.
Did not tell me to kill again.
What?
I killed to protect my son, to aid my friends. But I will be no one's monster. Never again.
You can hear the disgust in Christopher Judge's voice as he makes it clear to Freya that he does not kill on other people's orders. Now, he fights for his family and his friends. He always would have helped Freya do this, guilt or no guilt. This is one of the few moments in the game where Kratos takes a back seat in development, but Christopher Judge puts his best foot forward regardless. Our story truly picks up when Kratos returns to Atreus. After speaking with Freya, Kratos is under the assumption that Atreus disappeared for 2 days to go to Asgard. In his mind, this would be the only place he could disappear for so long. Tensions are the highest they've ever been between Kratos and his son, so nothing is being accomplished. Atreus is considering going to Asgard and talking to Odin. Kratos says that Atreus must be truthful with him and be his son. Atreus retorts,
Choose? I never get to choose. Just leave me alone.
Atreus loses control of his powers again, much to Sindri's misfortune. Atreus runs out to the portal, and Kratos hits us with the most intense boy he ever has. But notice how he stops to look at Atreus rather than running after him. He took what Atreus said earlier about never having a choice, and now he lets his son choose what he wants to do. Atreus, choosing his own path, goes to Asgard. While Atreus is away, Kratos undergoes a sort of regression, or he comes close to it. His anger is swelling and his patience is thin with everyone. He seeks out the Norns to know the fate of himself and his son. Upon meeting the Norns, they tell him that Heimdall seeks to kill his son, and Kratos is destined to kill Heimdall before that happens. Mimir is trying to convince Kratos that he should heed the Norns' prophecy, but he should do everything he can not to kill Heimdall.
Even supposing we're all perfectly comfortable plotting an assassination, and I, for one, am a mite rusty at that measure, we've got no way to reach Heimdall, and no way to kill him if we did.
I have killed gods greater than him.
I don't doubt that, brother, but it's hardly my point.
Kratos refuses to let prophecy dictate his actions. Listen to the confidence when, even though he understands the risk of denying fate, he seeks to save his son regardless.
Run headlong into danger to protect the ones you love.
I do not intend to change. Not about that.
Kratos' nature is to protect the people he cares about. This nature is one that took him many years to acquire, and because of this, he will never let it go for anything.
Then we agree. It'd be foolish to go after Heimdall.
No. If Heimdall must die for Atreus to live, then Heimdall must die.
Oh.
Because if Heimdall is a threat to my son, I must act. It is my...
Your nature. Well played, Norns.
This course of action does not make logical sense. Kratos knows this, but it does make sense for him to do it, because this is the type of person Kratos has become. Kratos is well aware that the path to Heimdall's death may lead to his own demise, but because of his nature, he refuses to stop. Kratos travels back to Svartalfheim to complete the third weapon, Draupnir, the Infinite Spear. Upon completion of the weapon, Brock comes to the realization that he is dead, or rather, only 3/4 of what he once was. Naturally, he becomes enraged. Kratos attempts to quell his anger by asking Brock himself to bless the spear. It is the nature of something that matters, not the form. Kratos reiterates this to Brock himself. Man, Kratos has come so far, dude. He has friends now, he's learned things from those friends. He's just a better person, all around. He's come so far from just being an angry god killer. This man has changed his nature to be a better father and a better person. But you know what? Kratos has always had this desire for companionship. He was just unlucky with the company he kept when he was in Greece. He went a long time without having any friends, but now that he has them, he keeps them close. Brock matters to Kratos, and the fact that he asks Brock for his blessing means the world to him. The blessing didn't matter to Kratos. He would have used the weapon regardless. But it mattered to Brock. That's what's important. Afterwards, Odin appears before Kratos, who abstains from immediately attacking him over the threat that harm may come to Atreus should Odin not return. Rarely do you get a chance for the main protagonist and antagonist to meet hours before the final battle, so this begs the question, why did Odin come here? At first glance, this appears to be Odin just showing up to psych out Kratos. But truly, I think this is actually one final ploy to attempt to bring Kratos around. We know that Odin is Tyr, and we also know that Kratos says directly to Tyr that he doesn't want war, but he will stop at nothing to get his son back. Odin attempts to persuade Kratos with the idea that neither of them want war.
I want peace as much as you do. Perhaps we can find it together.
He's lying.
I know.
You can hear a sense of disappointment almost in Kratos' voice, almost as if he really wanted to believe Odin when he said he didn't want war. If Odin was actually truthful, then Atreus would not be in danger, and Kratos would not have to kill any more gods. Odin, in a way, is using Kratos' truest desires against him. If Mimir wasn't there to give Kratos counsel about Odin's wrongdoings, then he may have been swayed. Kratos' desires are being dangled in front of him like a chicken leg, but Kratos knows he can't have it. After Odin's attempts at deception have failed, he begins to dig at Kratos in the most effective ways he can think of. Remember, Tyr is Odin. Tyr was there when Kratos snapped at Atreus, constantly referring to himself as Loki. Odin knows exactly where to dig.
Ironwood, it's the only way that...
Atreus. My son.
That boy of ours is everything I expected. So clever, kind. You sure he's yours? A kid.
You can tell even though he keeps his patience, he is angered by Odin's words. Listen to his voice and how he speaks.
Return my son, or you may meet the god I once was.
Sound familiar?
Leave my home.
It looks like Baldur inherited his father's ability to get under people's skin. Kratos returns to Sindri's house, where they have had little to no luck finding a path to Asgard. Kratos seeks to retire. I just thought I'd highlight this, it's a little detail. When Kratos removes his blades, he just drops them off to the floor, but when he takes off his axe, he caresses it. I think it's clear what weapon Kratos values more. There are no words in this scene, but the facial expressions that Christopher Judge has in this scene give us all we need to know. The memory of Faye is still in his mind, and it will probably never leave. For the first time in a long time, Kratos is asleep, alone, without any knowledge of his family's safety. Not just that, but the fact that Atreus may not even want to be with Kratos is equally depressing for him. Kratos wakes up in another dream, where we get to see some of the best voice acting from Judge yet. While riding down a stream, Faye inquires Kratos if he has anything to say to his son. Kratos believes that the least Atreus knows about Kratos, the better. You can hear it in his voice. Kratos at this point in his life still believes himself to be a monster, unfit for fatherhood.
The mighty god of war, frightened of his own child.
I do not fear our child, Faye. I fear for him.
Faye dismisses Kratos' despair, and canonically is the first to coin the term, "we must be better." Kratos awakens from his dream with the notion that his wish was to keep Atreus safe, and now Atreus' safety is in question. The rage is quaking across Kratos' face. After his adventure in Helheim, Atreus returns to find the Hellwalkers attacking Sindri's house. Kratos rejoins with him, and they defeat the walkers. Kratos looks out across the area to search for his son. He has been kicking himself trying to find a way to Asgard, but here comes Atreus back to meet him. The breaking of Kratos' voice all stems from the last thing he said to his son. "You can either continue to lie to me, or you can be my son."
What do I call you?
Almost on the verge of tears, this is a big decision that Kratos has given Atreus. Learning what we did in the dream, we know Kratos at one point believed he would not be a good influence on his son, and since he has taken to call himself Loki as of late, it pains Kratos to think that Atreus might not simply want to be his son anymore. All doubt is cast aside when Atreus rushes to seek the comfort from his father. Kratos' lips quiver, his breath leaves him, but most of all he is relieved to have Atreus, his son, back. He soon realizes this isn't just a "I'm glad to see you again" kind of hug, it's also a "I messed up really, really bad" kind of hug. They make for Helheim to correct Atreus' mistake. Secrets upon secrets have been kept between the boys for the duration of the game. Now that they are in Helheim, they will take the time to work through their problems. Before leaving Helheim, Kratos has a confession. Kratos has been regressing back into his Ghost of Sparta persona. Angry, vengeful, without Atreus there to calm him, Kratos was ready and willing to rip Asgard apart to find his son. It is understandable that Kratos feels a shade of guilt for allowing his old nature to return to him in some form. Atreus reassures him by echoing the words spoken to him so long ago at the beginning of their journey.
Don't be sorry, Father. Be better.
And of course, Kratos treats us with the warmest smile we have ever seen from the Spartan. The boys embrace, and they head back to Sindri's. There are so many more honorable mentions that I would put into this video, but you see, I can hear myself becoming a broken record when it comes to Christopher Judge compliments. Not to say I think the constant praise is unwarranted, more so that I can only compliment someone's performance so many times until it begins to lose its meaning. So, in the interest of sounding less redundant, I will highlight only 2 more amazing moments from this game, and then I'll move on to the outro. The first is when the Liar King Odin reveals himself to everyone by stabbing Brock. It's a surprise to no one that Kratos cares about Brock and values his company. Brock showed genuine interest in Atreus when he was sick. Brock speaks plain, so to speak, meaning that Brock always speaks his mind whether people want to hear it or not. All qualities that Kratos deemed worthy of his friendship. Odin murders Brock right in front of Kratos and then tactically holds Atreus hostage. There is nothing but utter frustration spewing from Kratos' lips as he stares down Odin's last good eye.
Throw me the mask and you've got a deal.
Stop moving.
This cowardly, degenerate, lying little bitch just killed one of Kratos' only friends right in front of him, played him for a fool, and then used his son as leverage. Every atom in Kratos' body is telling him to press circle repeatedly on this man.
Don't do anything you regret.
I regret many things. Killing you will not be one of them. Unless my son!
But he just can't. A brief side note, this would probably be the optimal scene to show someone if they hold the belief that Odin is not a powerful villain. Power has many definitions, but most of them can be described as the ability to act unhindered. Odin throughout this entire game was aware of everything, even in the beginning when he told Atreus to stop searching for Tyr, knowing full well that there was no way Atreus could reach him. He wanted to put that wedge in between Kratos and his son with this information, while ensuring that Tyr, or Odin, would be found, so he could infiltrate their ranks. They did exactly what Odin wanted them to do, and Odin didn't even have to order them to do so. That's power. Odin's power comes from his words and his mind. He will make you do his bidding and make you think it was your idea. Odin is the best villain in the God of War series, hands down. The Battle of Ragnarok has an amazing character moment for Kratos, but I think this last moment would be the one to end on. Actually, you know what, scratch that. Let's talk about the scene between Kratos and Thor. The battle between the two gods is hard fought and visceral. If you use Spartan Rage during the fight, Mimir reminds Kratos to maintain control, to remind him who he is. He does this because collectively the goal here is to not kill Thor. Throughout the entire fight, Kratos and Mimir yell to Thor, beckoning him to reason.
Odin does not shut the fuck up!
Thor is disarmed and at Kratos' mercy, but he remains calm. Thor constantly references the similarities between Kratos and himself. Kratos and Thor, both fathers who have lost their children due to their own actions, both plagued by their awful fathers, labeled as destroyers. Thor is a different shade of Kratos as he takes this label and deems it something to revel in, something to be proud of. Kratos looks down to Thor, refusing to fight. He refuses to be a destroyer, and he beckons Thor to do the same.
Don't you know what I've done? Yes! But what will you do now?
Kratos stares down Thor and remembers all of the people that have fallen to the Thunder God. The countless stories Mimir has told him does not sway him, because deep down Kratos knows that they are just Thor's version of the Ghost of Sparta. Behind this destroyer is a man, and if Kratos can reach that man, then he can become a better one. As Kratos knows, his story is still being written, and he is the author. He is hoping to make an author out of Thor.
For the sake of our children, we must be better.
Miraculously, it works, for a moment. Kratos has learned from his mistakes and is now hoping that others can do the same. This moment in particular that I'll highlight actually has one of the most subtlest details thanks to the work of Christopher Judge and Ryan Hurst. Just a hair before Odin arrives, they give each other a brief nod, in agreement. It's the subtlest thing, but they nod at each other. Thor was calming down and beginning his arc to change his nature. Too bad Odin put a stop to that. And now, the final scene we'll go over in this game. The goodbye between Kratos and his son. Atreus speaks of a new adventure to rescue the remaining giants, an adventure that he'll have to do alone. He has to do it alone for his own personal reasons. His father has always been there to bail him out when he ran into serious trouble, so he has to adventure on his own, forge his own path, to prove to himself that he can do it. Kratos looks Atreus dead in the eyes. He doesn't see the reckless young hunter swinging his knife at a dead troll. He sees a novice warrior ready to advance to the level of journeyman. He shows approval of his son's request and reassures him that he is ready. They exchange affection and remind themselves of the promise they made in Helheim. Kratos desperately holds back his tears as to not sour the moment.
Loki will go. Atreus. Atreus remains.
Take care of everyone.
Right before he leaves, Atreus looks to his father, gives a brief smile, and leaves. The Norse series of the God of War games has been building up to this moment, the passing of the torch, the new generation, the brighter future that was teased for Kratos when his son was born. However, the greatest part of this scene happens moments after, when Kratos notices the other side of the prophecy mural. At this point in the story, Faye was confirmed to have made this mural and destroyed Loki's shrine in Jotunheim. Knowing this, we can assume that the visions of this shrine were seen by Faye herself. Visions that she saw. Kratos sees his whole recent history before him, a history Faye most likely had visions of before she even met Kratos. Kratos leaving the destroyed ruins of ancient Greece, the fight with Baldur, scattering the ashes in Jotunheim, the battle with Thor. Finally, Kratos sees himself in a light that no one has ever seen him in, except for Faye. Kratos sees himself wielding the Leviathan, but fighting no one. He sees himself talking and passing on knowledge that he has acquired from his countless failures. He sees that one day people will worship him, appreciate him, love him. Random strangers will gather around and give praise to the warrior of Midgard, friend of Tyr and Freya, the man who gave Mimir a second chance at life and a way to right the wrongs of his past, the man who helped the Queen of the Valkyries break the magic spell that bound her to Midgard and taught her that revenge will not make you whole, the man who fought back against Odin and Thor and all the ruthless Aesir gods who ruled the realms with lies and murder, the hero who fights for the sake of his family and his friends. He doesn't take credit for these acts of kindness because fame was never something that he thought he was worthy of, but through this prophecy foretold by his wife, he sees now that he is. One day, in the distant future, people will recount the tales of Kratos, the hero whose teachings are wise and his words are true. To see himself in this light, to see himself in his loving wife Faye saw him in her heart, almost brings him to his knees. He is overwhelmed with happiness because he had no prior knowledge of this prophecy, but this prophecy happened as a result of his own actions. Once again, not seeking praise or cheers, he closes the shrine before Freya and Mimir can see it. There is much work to do. Kratos, Freya, and Mimir will see to it. This has been Christopher Judge as Kratos, and what a fan-freaking-tastic performance that was. You know what, screw it, he deserved all 7 minutes of that speech at the Game Awards. Kratos' story serves to all of those around the world. It doesn't matter how far you fall. You can be a destroyer, you can be raised as a killing machine, used as a weapon by the god you worship, but even so, you can be better. Whether you're a criminal, someone who hurt your family, someone who has done wrong. You are not your failures. You can choose to be better. Kratos is not absolved for his crimes. He knows this, but that was then. His story is far from over, and I have a feeling that it's just about to get to the best part. Kratos will be a hero. I deeply hope that wherever Kratos goes, Christopher Judge will play his part, giving it 100% like he did here. Actually, you know what? Keep everyone in this game was talented. Thank you all so much for watching. Next video is going to come with a little change of pace. There's a certain Puss in Boots I want to talk about. Goodbye for now.